Welcome back, CSE 235, to exercise 14, where we're connecting to our database and we're now working on the front end. And I just wanted to show you this is a finished product of what we're going to try and do, and also to prove to you that it works. I got it working. So this is your URL that you're going to use for your web app. You're going to have your username here and it's going to show up in a tab. And I even put some styles in here. So we're going to do this through Flask. I have a styles file here, and remember we have to put it in a static folder. I don't think we did that in the previous Flask exercise, but we have to make a static folder to put any static files in that we link to, and it's actually not that hard to do that. So we can put some CSS in there to make it look nicer, and actually when it's in the static folder you don't have to rerun the application. You can just keep refreshing here. So that's all we did here. We could put a border, we could do anything we want. We can do queries to show part of this stuff, but this is the whole database being printed out right now. So it can be done, so we're going to do this. So let's go and work to that point, because we started off with just a hello Flask file. So we're going to keep working with that and get to this point where we can actually run queries from our database and have it show up on this page through Python Anywhere. So that's coming up. Okay, what we're going to do now is check our connection first before we display any database data. So we're back at our files here, and just to review, we have our CSE 235 folder. We have main py, which we created, and we just output it in the console. Now, we're not going to use the console, but we are going to need some of this. And here's what we're going to need here. We're going to need a bunch of this, but just for now, we're going to need our connection, and we're also going to need this import MySQL connector. So I'm going to copy this from main py, and you might say, well, can we switch it around and have this be our main file and Flask app py not use that? Yes, we can, but it's a little bit of a headache. So what I'd recommend is just copying to the Flask py, because you'd have to reset your web app to do that. So it's easier just copying the code back into the one that Python Anywhere created, which is the Flask py. So I'm going to copy this, just the database information and the import MySQL connector. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go back to CSE 235, and I'm going to go into the one, this is the one Python Anywhere created, and this is the Flask app. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to go down here, and I'm going to paste this, and I'll move this stuff back. And again, this isn't ready to go yet, but I will need MySQL connector up here. So we still need to import it in. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this and put it down here, and put it right after this. Now, initially I put a comma and put it here, but it's not from Flask. This is a Python driver, so it's not Flask. But while I'm up here, I'm going to put comma render template, because render template is part of the Flask templating engine. So I'm going to put that in there because we are going to make an index file which is going to be in the templates folder. And I still am going to use the MySQL connector because we need it for this information here. Now, we're not going to have anything called hello world anymore. What we're going to do up here is put index, and we're going to have an index file in there, and this is where we're going to display information. So I'm going to just take this out for now. And this is going to be in another function. So we're going to make a function called check database connection. So I'm just going to copy this here, and I'll put this here, and let's just call it check underscore db connect. Let's just try that. And that'll be our connection. So I'll hit enter, so it would already be indented. And what we're going to do here is we're going to basically cut this stuff and put it here. And I'm going to make sure it's all indented the same. So I'm going to backspace and hit tab, backspace, tab, backspace, tab, backspace, tab, backspace, tab. And I'll tab this over since that's in the function definition. Now, what we're going to do with this is just connecting. So we're going to do a try and accept. This will tell it if it's going to connect or not, and we'll basically get a true false. And then based on that, we'll display something down here on our page. So again, we're doing this before displaying any information just to make sure we're connecting. So we're going to do something called try and accept, and you could check this in W3 schools. It's very common with Python. I didn't use it much in the Python 1 programming class or the Python programming 1 class. And this is for checking for error codes. And there is an error code within this MySQL connector called .error, which will come up with all kinds of different error codes. Now, we don't have to display the error code, but we just have to know that there's an error connecting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put try, and then I'll hit enter. Now that means all this stuff should get indented again. So I'm going to hit tab again, and I'll backspace here. So it'll look like that. So we're going to try this, and then what's going to happen here, if this all works, is we're going to do a return true. So that's if this works. If this goes through and everything, we're going to return true. We're just going to return that value from this part of the function. And then we're going to do something called an except. Now I haven't used this much, so I'm going to go here and put except. And you might have used this before if you had other programming classes. Now you don't put a colon right here. You basically use the exception that you're looking for. And the exception that we're looking for, and you'd have to look this up, but I'm telling you, the exception that we're looking for is MySQL connector. And I'll copy this and I'll put it here. And it's not .connect. We're looking for the error, and they have something called error. And if you look up MySQL or SQL, you'll see this. And there's all kinds of errors, but we're going to put this error here. And usually what they do, they put as E. And that means this is going to be a variable, and that'll display the error code. And usually you could just display it on the page. Now, we're not going to display it on our page right now, because normally that'll display right in the console, but we want to display it on our page, and we actually don't want the error code right now. We just want to tell if we're connected or not. So what I'm going to do is just kind of ignore this. You could leave it there, and you do have to put the colon after the end. So this is pretty common code. MySQL connector connect, MySQL connector error. Now this thing I made up. This is my function name I made up. So if it connects, it's going to be true, and guess what? If it doesn't connect, it's going to be what? It's going to be false. So we're going to say return false. So then we could use that to display something on our page. So we're going to say return false. So that's our first function. And then we're going to go down and work on this one. This is the one that's going to display on our page. So I'm going to save this just to save what I have so far. And I have an error because I'm just starting a function here and I'm not finishing it. So that's why that error is. But what we're going to do here is we're going to do something called is connected. We could just say is underscore connected. This is just something I'm making up, and this is something standard that you'll see if you look up stuff. Is connected, it's a variable, and we're just going to say is connected equals, and then we're going to say this, if that's equivalent to that. So basically this is a variable that's going to represent that this is okay. Now saying this is okay, it means it's true, because this function is basically, if it's true, then is connected is going to equal true. So you could just put returns true. You could put something like that, just so you know that it's connected. It's connected, returns true. Just be a note to yourself there. And then is connected just means that it's connected. So that's a variable that's representing that function that's returning true. So then if that's the case, we're going to do a quick if-else statement. So we're going to say if is connected. And we don't have to say equals true. We could just say is connected, because that just means it's true. So if is connected, that means it's true. So we could just put a colon here. And then we're going to make a variable, message equals. Remember, this is Python we're doing here, so we don't need var or const, anything like that. We're going to say message equals and connected successfully. We'll just put that. And then we could just put else, because then if it doesn't, it's just else. I'll go back here and I'll put else. And then we could say message equals not connected. That's all we're doing, is just checking if it's connected or not connected. We're not worried about the error code right now. We just want to make sure that this can display on our index page. Okay, now one other thing we need to make this display on our index page is the render template, because remember, we're importing this render template, and that makes it show up to a page in the templates folder. Now we didn't do that yet, so we still have to do that. So we have to finish off this function here, and to do that, we'll just do a return. And it's going to return no matter what. It's going to use this. If it's connected, it's going to use that. If it's not connected, but it's all going to display on the page. So we're not going to be indented here. We're going to go back out, and we're going to say return, and we're going to use the render template function that's built in to Flask. And the arguments we're going to put in here, the index.html page that we're going to create. So we're going to go index.html. You could use single or double quotes. So that will be the first thing. And then we're going to send along our variable. And I know this is odd, but you have to do message equals message. That just sends the variable along from Python to the page. So it's basically embedded in there. So you're saying this variable is going to be sent as that variable. And you want to keep these the same. You don't have to necessarily make them different. You can, but you want to be consistent. So you'll see data equals data and things like that. So we're going to call that message equals message. So then we can use that on the index page in our embedded code, and we put it in those double curly braces when we use it. Okay, I'm just backspacing here. I think I just have extra space there in my function. So let's just review this again. We're importing Flask and render template. We're importing the MySQL connector. So we can do this. This is setting up the instance of the Flask object. And this name is basically trying to use the main name. It doesn't have to be main.py, but whatever you create it. It means it's using the main module and not in something that's imported. So that's what this is. And again, here we're just checking if it's connected or if it's not connected. And as E you can use as an error code, but we're not going to use it right now. So we're just saying return false. And we're saying if connected is true, we're going to connect successfully. And if not, we're going to say not connected. So if it gets this false, it's going to be not connected down here. I'll just put an extra return here just to give some space. And that should be okay so far. So I'm going to save this, and I'm not going to do anything else with it right now, but let's just double check. Check DB connect. Check DB connect. Make sure all our things are the same. Is connected is a variable we created, and is connected is here. We're just checking if it's true. So is connected is basically the function being true. Is connect means if it's true. You could put equals equals true if you wanted to. You could do something like this. You could do that. You don't have to. You could just leave it like that. Let's assume that it's true. And then we have two messages. Now we're going to put those messages in our index page. And let's save this and let's create an index page. And let's actually stop here and continue that in part 3.